Thank you, Mr. Bates.
Norman Bates.
And of course, the original Psycho is based on a real person and real circumstances.
I looked up Ed Gein. How did this person spawn all these ideas for different horror films?
E.T. uncovers how serial killer Ed Gein became the inspiration behind so many iconic horror movies.
People remember Ed Gein right away.
Unearthing unseen interviews with those who knew the infamous murderer.
The Butcher of Plainfield. If Hitchcock's film shocked movie audiences, what happened here outside tiny Plainfield, Wisconsin, shocked the world.
Before Norman Bates, Leatherface, and Buffalo Bill, there was the real-life American horror story.
You couldn't believe that somebody could do something like that. It's really a real sick deal that he pulls.
This is where Eddie Gein lived. He was known locally as a farmhand. His home and barn stood here at a remote intersection several miles outside of town.
Back in 1957, at the end of the year, I was living in a small town in Wisconsin. About 40 miles away, a series of murders had been discovered. Ed Gein was a mass murderer. He dug up graves. He was not altogether the kind of neighbor that you would prefer to have.
After a local woman who owned the store that once stood here went missing, police found a receipt in their search, which led them to Ed.
Will you please tell me what you found here in November 1957?
We looked around the outside of the house, nobody around. We finally walked in that back shed and then into the house. Well, I took his bedroom, and another deputy took the kitchen, and the sheriff took the shed. And all of a sudden he hollered and had found her body. The head was laying on the ground.
They found the death masks of about 10 women. They found pieces of human skin used to stretch over drums and as lampshades.
What went through your mind when you saw this?
Well, it was unbelievable to see something like that, but we knew we had the right man then.
Ed was arrested, yet the town felt no less safe after learning their mild-mannered farmer was anything but.
I had no knowledge that he was any different than anybody around, really.
He was a little strange, I guess, if you'd say that, but I'm probably strange to you, too, so.
And after further looking around, we found shoe boxes under the bed. And one shoebox had the face mask of a woman, a tavern keeper in Portage County. So that's the only reason we knew he had at least 2 victims.
Well, I guess he was so kind of quiet, and he would kind of sit and stare.
They're probably watching me. Well, let them.
It's a wonderful story. It's a story that can be reduced to 2 or 3 sentences and still has originality and great impact. Of course, Hitchcock was an integral part, but he didn't write the story.
I was interested in the crime. I didn't know the details, but I was interested in the situation. I thought to myself, there's a novel here.
That novel turned into director Alfred Hitchcock's celebrated classic.
In the case of Norman, it's really the Hamlet of horror roles. There's so many dimensions to him.
So during the next year, I brooded about it. I wondered how it was possible for anybody like that to have lived all his life in a town of 700 people without anybody suspecting him.
You know, I think I must have one of those faces you just can't help believing.
And I decided to invent a character who would be in similar circumstances, and that's how Psycho came into being.
What facts mixed in with that fiction?
I grew up in that house up there. My mother and I were more than happy.
Ed led a similar life with his mother until her death, which was years before his crimes came to light. Police discovered he kept her bedroom just as she left it.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
It's the quintessential gothic haunted house story. The house with the motel down below. Robert Bloch had it together when he put those 2 ingredients as a kind of a pair of locations together and yet separate.
There's one spot in the Hollywood Hills where everything comes to a dead stop.
You can't miss it. It's probably one of the most recognizable sets in the world, and it's right here at Universal. It is the house that Hitchcock made famous, the Psycho House.
I know, even in bright sunlight, it has a kind of awesome terror about it. I agree with you.
Bates Motel still scaring theme park guests decades later, but Ed's house burnt down months after his arrest. While some suspect arson, that was never proven.
I'm, in my own mind, I'm glad that that did happen. There would be no reason that would have been a museum.
No museum was built, but the notorious story brought early true crime obsessives out in droves to Plainfield.
It was very irritating. You were upset about the situation as it was, and then have all these people who wants to be noted for something like that.
Meanwhile, doctors diagnosed Ed behind bars. He was deemed insane, unable to stand trial for his diabolical deeds, leading Ed to institutions instead of prison.
Was he nervous? Was he agitated?
No. He never was nervous as long as I've known him. Even during the whole trial and everything, he never was nervous.
If you're wondering how Eddie Gein could have committed his depraved and horrifying acts for years without being discovered, you need only know how isolated he was.
The years that I knew Ed, he was always the same. He was constant. He didn't change. He never got excited.
They'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
Psycho's success spawned sequels, a shot-for-shot remake, and a TV origin story.
I mean, of course, Anthony Perkins has done an iconic turn as Norman Bates.
What do you think? This is crazy, Mark.
There was a whole wealth of material to draw on. I mean, not only the original film, but the book that the film was based on, and then in turn the life of Ed Gein.
Ed's life proved required reading for actors stepping into on-screen worlds inspired by the real-life monster.
I actually looked up on the internet about Ed Gein. Ed Gein? Gein. I'd seen the first one, the original, and it's incredibly disturbing, and I love that.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre's director, Tobe Hooper, was partly inspired by Ed Gein's House of Horrors for his cult classic.
You know, I knew I was doing something that was novel and would do some business and make some kind of mark historically.
I wanted to know about his life. He was a person, you know, it made him very real for me.
He would later become known as the Butcher of Plainfield.
Norman is an unpredictable character. I think that's one of the reasons he's a popular character.
As for the man behind these craven characters, Ed died in 1984 at 77 years old.
Have you any unsolved missing persons cases on your books?
Yes.
Plainfield had plenty of those before Ed's arrest, but officially he was only tied to 2 murders. His death left the city forever curious about its claim to fame.
You know, who knows what makes a person do this?
Finding that answer for Ed and names alongside his in serial killer history led to a brand new department in law enforcement.
We're interviewing all the serial killers now in custody for a psychobehavioral profile.
This whole program is called the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime. Tom Harris, the author of Silence of the Lambs, he spoke to several of us, and he developed this bizarre character.
It rubs the lotion on its skin, or else it gets the hose again.
People say I was good, but I scared them. You know, it's nice to hear that the work is effective.
Yet again, Hollywood came calling with a new Ed Gein-inspired antagonist.
Lord Almighty.
Inside another best-selling book turned terror masterpiece.
It'll be a bizarre character to the public, thinking that someone like this can't possibly exist. But we know in the National Center, this person does exist.
Busy hunting that new one, Buffalo Bill. What a naughty boy he is.
He is a composite of several serial killers. Ted Bundy would put a cast on his hand, and when the right victim came along, the victim would help him. And then you'll see a pit. There'll be a scene where there'll be a pit, and that's the Gary Heidnik case out of Philadelphia. Ed Gein in Plainfield, Wisconsin. He would kill people, and others he'd dig up their graves.
What does he do, this man you you seek? He kills women. No, that is incidental. Lector says all the things that the human being doesn't dare voice. Because I guess we all have a very dark side to our nature. Thank goodness we don't release that dark side, otherwise there'd be anarchy and chaos.
I'm fascinated by, and always will be fascinated by, the people that are objects of cruelty and people that are left out.
Sure, you can use my phone.
Freeze! Put your hands over your head!
The book was really good, the script was really good, and the director was really good. So, I mean, I told people, I said, this is going to be a big movie.
The Silence of the Lambs scored big at the box office and the Academy Awards, with Oscar wins in the top 5 categories. And for Ed, one more spot along the Horror Hall of Fame.
Beer is a nice sensation to a certain, I mean, it's just, it's a sensual kind of, sensory kind of thing, it's an experience, And in life, you don't often get scared, get the adrenaline going.
Look, I mean, I have a favorite serial killer, for heaven's sake.
So do I.
Ed Gein. Ah, the OG.
And the OG's stamp on pop culture isn't going anywhere, whether it's a joke in a kid's movie.
I've never been so flattered and creeped out at the same time. Are you gonna make me into a lampshade?
Or the trickle down of terror that's frightened film audiences since Psycho.
Old habits die hard.
From countless murderous motifs to tiny tributes for those in the know.
Hello, Loomis.
Pardon me, I'm Loomis, Dr. Sam Loomis.
I caught him, Sheriff. Wait, who is it? Billy Loomis.
I think we all felt we were creating something good. I don't think it ever crossed anyone's mind that it would have that kind of impact.
He just left Plainfield a spot on the map that otherwise wouldn't be known, and it's not the way you would really want to be known or a spot on the map.
Just as Ed Gein's story looms over this Wisconsin town, all Hollywood horror owes a deadly debt to the Butcher of Plainfield.
Well, I think everybody has a dark side. I think we've all got something in us that is not for public consumption, don't you?
By the way, I have it in my contract that any movie I film on the lot has to be no further than 90 feet from the Psycho house at any time, any set. So here we are. I don't like to be too far away from Mother when she needs me, to massage her bunions.